Welcome back, class. Today we're going to talk about the derivatives of the inverse trig functions. We're nearing that point where we know how to take the derivative of every function we've ever considered, but we're going to mop up a couple in these next two quick sections. I'll note, by the way, that if you pull up your homework packet, all of these formulas are listed cleanly for you here, the ones that we're about to talk about today. So if you want, you can look it up there. You don't have to copy this down or anything like that, but I'm going to leave this here as we do some examples. Okay. Let's start with an example. Let's say find f prime of 3 if f of x is x squared times the inverse tangent of square root of x. Okay, so I'm going to need my formula for the inverse tangent derivative over here, but also the way this is written down. I'm also going to need the product rule because this is a product, and I'm also going to need the chain rule because there's a square root in here. So this is going to be a little bit messy, but I'm also viewing this section as an opportunity to review some of the messier sorts of derivative problems, just since, again, we're coming back to this after a bit away when we've probably had many other things on our minds. Okay, so let's start with the product rule, which is the first thing I have to do here. So that's going to tell me that when I go to take this derivative and get the derivative of the first part, which is 2x times the second part, is the inverse tangent of the square root of x, plus, and now I'm going to have the first, times the derivative of the second. So times, and I'm just going to write times the derivative of inverse tangent of square root of x here, and do that part separately. Okay. So here's our subproblem world, where we're going to figure out the derivative of inverse tangent of square root of x. Okay, here's how that's going to work. This is going to be a chain rule question again, because I've composed here the inverse tangent and the square root of x. So when I do that, I'm going to look and say, hey, what's the outside function? It's inverse tangent. What's the inside function? It's square root of x. And what are the derivatives of these things? Well, when I go to find f prime of x, well, that's the derivative of arctangent. That's the thing we just learned. That is 1 over 1 plus x squared. And then g prime of x, that is 1 over twice the square root of x. Okay, so I'm going to put that all here for the time being. And so now we know that the derivative of the inverse tangent of the square root of x, it is, and so remember what the chain rule says, is that you're going to take f prime of g and then multiply it by g prime. Okay, so f prime of g here will be 1 over 1 plus the square root of x squared times, and then g prime here is 1 over twice the square root of x. And so if I tidy that up a bit, you might actually notice that the square root of x squared is just x. So this is 1 over 1 plus x times 1 over 2 square root of x. And we can leave it that way for now, or if you want, you can combine these denominators, whichever way you like. Now, that lets us go back and write down what our derivative is, because now we know the answer to this part. Okay, so this part is what we just found. So we can now write down f prime of x. What is it? It is 2x times the inverse tangent of the square root of x plus x squared times 1 over 1 plus x times 1 over twice the square root of x. Okay, so that, lovely as it is our derivative. And what we were actually asked, though, was to figure out f prime of 3. So I need to plug 3 into all of this. So f prime of 3, 2 times 3 times the inverse tangent of the square root of 3 plus 9 times a fourth plus 1 over 2 times the square root of 3. Okay, so the main thing I need to know is what is the inverse tangent of square root of 3? Okay, well, how do I end up with a tangent of square root of 3? I end up with a tangent of square root of 3 if sine is root 3 over 2 and cosine is a half. So that means I'm looking at pi over 3. The tangent of pi over 3 is the square root of 3. Okay, so this is going to be 2 times 3 times pi over 3 plus 9 over 8 times the square root of 3. Okay, those 3's cancel. And so this will be 2 pi plus 9 divided by 8 times the square root of 3. Oops, sorry about that. All right. Until next time.